Absolutely. Do I seem excited to you?
Yes, you do. You seem very excited.
Well, we're awesome. We're really, really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
And thanks for breaking away from your day to do this. I know you are the epitome of a busy man. So
we're all busy.
That's true. But so they understand a little bit more of your role. I mean, it's easy to say you're what, number 2, number 3, number 4, whatever in iHeart. What does that mean? And I'd like to say that Bob Pittman, we had him last year.
Yep.
They loved him. Do you guys love Bob Pittman last year?
Yeah. That's good.
So
I'll let him know you guys gave the clap. I'm headed from here to New York. So
excellent. So now tell in that relation. So what's your relationship with Bob and within iHeart? What do you do?
Before we go there, I should probably say thank you to everybody in the room. Thank you guys for embracing radio and for embracing iHeart. I know that a lot of you are partners with us, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate your advocacy, and we appreciate you as a partner. I understand I'm sitting in the room. I was talking a little bit with Dave back there. I understand I'm sitting in the room of excellence right here, that you guys are the top of the top, and so that's impressive, and I consider it an honor to be able to share with you guys some time this afternoon, or this. So thank you. So my role in iHeart is we have 858 stations in 150 markets, and those all roll up to me. So on the product side, the programming side, the sales side, marketing, everything rolls up to me, and I report directly to Bob, who is our CEO and chairman.
Excellent.
So our job is to create audiences, so we can then lend those audiences to you as you create a relationship with our consumer and our listener. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. In its simplest form.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you actually were, I like to tell everyone that Bob might be at 30,000 feet. You're a lot closer to the trenches.
Yes.
And that you really see closely what a lot of smart advertisers are doing.
Yeah, I get the benefit of traveling. My wife would tell you it's not a benefit, but I'm traveling quite a bit. I'm on the road a lot, and probably the best part of my job is getting to sit down with CMOs, CEOs, field marketing managers, and kind of find out, what's happening in the field, what's working, what's not, what the responses are, the challenges they have, the obstacles, what they're running into, and how we can address it. So we have a master strategy, but every market and every vertical is a little bit different. So being out there in the field allows you to kind of figure out what's going on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So when you look at some of these really higher end, smart, and we say some people just spend money to spend money.
Yeah.
Some people do it smart. They do it wisely.
Yeah.
What trends do you see of the smartest advertisers that you come in contact with? You go, they get it.
I would say, look, things have changed, I'd say, quite a bit over the last probably 5 to 10 years. That everybody wants their money to work smarter. Everybody wants to be more efficient. And at the end of the day, everybody wants some kind of measurement. It's like, hey, I want validation that the decision I'm making is correct, because I don't want to just throw anything to chance. And so most of the marketers that we talk to now are very specific on the front end, like, what are we trying to accomplish? It's not just like, I'm going to partner with you, whether it's iHeart or it's a TV partner or digital. What are we going to try to accomplish together, and what kind of metrics of measurement are we going to put behind it to see that we're getting a return?
And what are they looking at?
Yeah, everybody's different, because if you're brand new to a market and it's awareness, or it's if I think of some of the clients we've talked to recently, like we have a gaming, there may be somebody launching a game on an app. For them, their metrics of measurement is downloads. How many? We just launched a disruptor in the auto space called Fair that is trying to, for those of you who may or may not have heard it, you can transact to get a car on a phone. It's that kind of easy. You go on, you basically scan your license. It tells you what you're eligible. Hey, you can afford a $500 a month payment, and here's all the cars in the market for you. You hit on it and you get a car. There's no contracts. There's nothing else. You can return it when you're done with it. For them, it's downloads. For somebody that is, it might be a local advertiser that runs a roofing business. Theirs is about direct response. How many, and that direct response that used to take form in the place of calls is taking place in the form of search, or some other form of digital communication. Or sites. And so it really depends where you are in your life cycle, or where you are with your product, if you're looking for awareness, intent, consideration, or actually call to action. And there's different measurements along the way. There may be a brand study that talks about, hey, how did we do on consideration, intent, awareness, lift, whatever at the top, and at the bottom it may be actually foot traffic to your retail location.
Excellent.
So it varies based on where in the funnel you're trying to impact. And the advertisers, I'll add this, Matt, and is the advertisers, when you say smarter, the advertisers that know what they're trying to accomplish, are we trying to move intent or consideration, or are we trying to get call to action? The ones that focus on an area are the ones that are successful. The ones that say, I want to hit the whole funnel, the messaging gets too garbled. Like, you have to be focused in your messaging, because today's consumer, their attention span is like this. And so if you try to tell them too many things, they walk away with nothing. So make sure that you have something compelling to say and focus on that one thing. So when they walk away from hearing about you and your business and what your point of differentiation is, that it was meaningful. Because nobody has time for a bunch of mediocre,
That's good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about compelling for a minute.
Yeah.
We've got almost everybody here uses some type of influencer, whether it's a national, local. Talk a little bit about the connection between authenticity and then how that translates then after to the customer experience.
Yeah. I'm a huge believer in the use of our influencers. Back from the days when I was with the Dodgers, back to the days of O'Malley, for any of you that are here in Los Angeles that could remember that. But so I've grown up in my career with influencers, and this is what I would say about influencers, is we have engagement rates. If you look at kind of we have our own metrics just like you do. Like, how do we compare to other people in our space? And our engagement levels on a daily basis are about 50% higher than Google or Facebook. And you say, well, why is the engagement high, 50% higher than Facebook and Google? It's because of companionship. At the end of the day, companionship results in longer time spent listening on a daily basis. And if you have a companion, then it's not a surprise that 65% of our audience would actually go purchase a product as a result of a companionship, because people listen to their friends. So if it's a friend of yours and you're recommending an influencer, as you say, that, hey, you purchase this product, 65% of our listeners will do it because that you're close to them. And there's no more effective form of advertising than word of mouth. I think all of you would probably agree with that if you could just buy word of mouth, that's what you would do. Well, that's what you're doing when you're buying influencers. You're just not buying them 1-to-1, you're buying them 1 to 10,000 or 1 to 20,000. But you got a friend talking to you about it. I think that the key thing to get to a more direct answer to your question, though, is so if you've got that kind of influence, and by the way, 80% of marketers will use some kind of influencer marketing in 2019. The upside is you've got somebody that's connected. You've got somebody that has an existing relationship. It's not a social influencer that's relying on celebrity status. That people are like, well, okay, I like them because they're a celebrity, but I don't feel like I know them. That influencer piece, at the end of the day, that word of mouth that I'm talking about moves you to the front of the line. But it only does it if there is a level of authenticity. You talked about authenticity, is today's consumer can sniff it out. They know when it's an ad and when it's somebody that believes in your product. And so they just do it. It's a highly intelligent buying community and consumer. And so it's important that when you frame up the messaging, that there's enough time to let it breathe, that it's not a 30-second or a 60-second that is just, here's a bunch of copy I want you to read. And at the end of the day, you can smell it. I mean, you can listen when you're listening on the radio. If you have something and there's a little bit of time for anecdotal or personalization and something that is delivered with a little bit of space and breathing the way you would talk to somebody, not the way I would read it, then that resonates. And the influencers are, for me, I equate it with like when you go to for the people that have used influencers for us, I think it's a way to cut to the front of the line. You're borrowing off their equity at the end of the day, right? It's like you want to come up and you say, Matt has a relationship with these consumers, and these consumers don't know me at all. But if I walked into the room and he'd had time to talk to each of you and say, hey, listen, I've known Greg for a long time, and he knows his stuff. Like, he's been wildly successful, and he's moved people in your business. And he said that to you. When I walked in, you're going to give me a much warmer reception. You're going to be like, hey, come on, I want to talk to you. You're going to give me that because you know Matt and you trust him. Well, that's what our influencer is at scale. So if you use it right and you're consistent, with it never fails. It's like real estate. It always goes up over time. If you just commit to it over time, it's going to keep going up. And the same thing is true with our audiences.
So how important do you think it is then for, if we do have a local influencer, we could say, to be able to get to know them, spend time with them?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's really important. I think everybody that has one should 100% do that. You should go in and not a phone conversation, because once they get to know you, they're going to be able to deliver the message more authentically too. They need to know what makes you tick. They need to, when they talk on the air, that it's a friend, that they're talking to somebody like they're a friend. Like, and the influencers will do that. And sometimes you're like, well, my influencer doesn't do that. It's not, well, make sure you let Matt know, and we'll get on that if they're not doing that. But you should absolutely get to know the influencer in your market, because that's what's going to come across too when you talk about that authenticity. When they talk on the air and they say, oh my gosh, I was with Karen the other day, and Karen was, and they say that, then it's like, oh, he really knows Karen. Like, they have a relationship. And if you're gonna, if they're recommending a friend, or they're recommending, this goes back to the word of mouth, then the consumer needs to believe that you really do know this person, and this isn't, just an advertisement.
Now, translating that to, you go to the website. So now I hear you. Back in the day, maybe 5-10 years ago, let's pick on Dave Rickards in San Diego, right? I know you work with him really well. You know him well.
Yeah.
He says, call this number.
Yeah.
Now we know. We get a phone call, he's working. How has that changed now versus 5 to 7 years ago?
Yeah, it's interesting, because we've tracked this with a lot of our direct response clients, and the world has changed, like, dramatically. We still have clients that rely on call, but a large majority, we live in a search world. I mean, that's just the world that we live in. Everybody, when you hear about something, it doesn't matter what it is, there's a few exceptions. Nobody needs to search Taco Bell, right? It's like, there's a few exceptions out there. But for the most part, if you're going to make a purchase of any kind or need more information about something, you go on and you search. And so I would say a lot of the advertisers that we have, the way they judge our effectiveness isn't even on calls anymore, it's on search lift. It's like, here's my baseline of search before I started with you. Here's my baseline of search now. Like, what you've done to create through my influencer relationship is how have I generated more interest and intent and consideration that people want to go find out more about me. Now, there's a I don't want to say a double-edged sword, but there's a responsibility to everybody in this room too, in the same way we have. If you're going to do that, if you're going to invite people to the party, your business is your party. We're basically sending out the invitations for you to come to the party. So if we send out the invitations for you, your party better be ready. So when they come to your party, that the same level of expectation that they heard on the air from Dave or from whatever influencer you have is what they're getting, either when they do connect with you or when they visit your site or whatever else, that there's that same level. Because if they get an invitation to a great party and their first, I would say that their first communication with you or their first whatever they find on your site does not meet up to those level of expectations, then there's a disconnect and they'll check out. And so I think it's important that those two work together.
Excellent.
Which I'm sure with the highest performers in here that's what happens, but that's an expectation that what we talk to a lot of our clients about.
What's your feeling about now? So now I go to the website.
Yep.
What's your feeling about having an influencer now? Obviously, someone like a Hannity or Beck might create some hate mail from us. But about having a non-polarizing personality on the site, having examples. Have you seen anyone do that?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have started doing it. Like, we have clients that, if you're talking about just using personalities beyond the broadcast, I would encourage you to use them. People consume media differently now. It's like, you guys could tell me stories if I started asking you about how your transaction have changed and how your interaction has changed, with your consumers over the years. The way they consume media is very different now. They'll consume it on broadcast, which, by the way, 85% of all audio consumption is still done on broadcast. I mean, can you believe that? Like, with Pandora and Spotify and iHeart and TuneIn and all the others, 85% of all audio consumption is still done on broadcast. And that's not iHeart reported, that's Nielsen reported. So a large majority is still done here. But that 15% makes a difference. Like, where are they going after that? Well, they're on earbuds. They're on, we were worried, Bob may have brought this up last year. I'll bring it up again for frequency's sake. Everybody in here believes in frequency, right? it's interesting because our biggest concern was our distribution. Like if you think about radio, it's stayed at over a 90% reach since the 70s. It hasn't changed. So our distribution and our ability to connect with people hasn't changed at all, while every other platform has really had a bigger effect or impact with fragmentation. Our biggest concern was who's going to actually manufacture radios moving forward. You've got it in the car, but if you notice, you really don't see like radios being sold, and that's our distribution platform. And then along comes Alexa, right? And Alexa now in the home. So for us, our in-home, the consumption in-home is going up dramatically. In the matter of the last year and a half, 20% of our stream is now done through Alexa. In a year and a half. That's not on broadcast, but on our stream. And so if you look at kind of where it's going, now we've spent the last 7 years developing relationships with Alexa and Google and everybody else to make sure that we're embedded. So when you ask, in Los Angeles, Alexa, hey, Alexa, play Kiss FM. You don't have to download a skill set. We're just embedded in Alexa. They consider us their audio partner. But back to your question. So my belief is when you're using your influencer, you should 100% be using them on the stream, on broadcast, cutting digital for video pre-roll, that you can use either on your own site or that we can help, plan and purchase for you on sites. But why not? If you've bought into an influencer, why not use them on as many platforms as possible to get your full benefit out of them? And they understand that, and they expect that. And they're evolving just like everybody else is. I think that's the better way to tap in and get the most value out of them.
So to that point, when we think about reaching digitally, can you explain the difference between just a wave of digital advertising versus getting digital through iHeartMedia and targeting a specific station audience?
Yeah. So look, if you're using an influencer and you're wanting to make an impact against that audience, then they already have a propensity and they already have some kind of connection and relationship with the station. So buying our assets on, to extend that relationship and get that frequency that we're talking against that audience is going to be important. But listen, I'm not here to tell you that you should exclusively be buying iHeart either. That there's a lot of options in the digital space that would make sense for you. But as it relates to the frequency against a core audience, if you're going to buy the influencer, I was talking a little bit earlier about living in a noisy environment, where the average attention span, is down to, 6 seconds, right? Which means I've lost you all multiple times since I've started talking, right? It's like, hey, exactly what? So that happens, and, you'll tell somebody something, and they'll be like, Matt, why didn't you tell me that? You're like, I did 9 times. You just didn't listen the first 8. And so getting people, on multiple platforms, I think is important. You didn't ask this question, but I'm going to answer a question that when you were going to the digital space, I think it's important too. People ask us all the time, like, look, 50% of ad budgets around the country have, over the last 4 or 5 years, have shifted into the digital space. And why did they shift? Why did all the money shift into digital? It's because it's one-to-one and it's measurable. And it's like, I want analytics and data on everything that I do, and I can get that in the digital. And so you had this huge, a huge amount of money shift down the funnel, what I would say is upper funnel, which you're filling the funnel with all kinds of new prospects, down to lower funnel. I've got somebody that's ready to purchase, and I'm going to spend all my money in that space. An interesting thing happened. Like, you get all the analytics, you get the data, you get the measurement. We do the same thing. We use digital in a robust way. But sales didn't increase. If you look at 60% of the companies in that space, the sales didn't actually increase with all of the money that was going down the funnel. And so you have people like P&G, Anheuser-Busch scratching their heads saying, why is that? Because look at all this rich data we have. Anheuser-Busch, they target men 21-34. That's their target. And they're like, we're going to spend everything against that in a highly targeted digital way. Well, 70% of their sales are outside of that demo. And so you have the CMO that comes up and says, wait a second, like 70% of our sales are outside that demo. When we buy a highly targeted men 21-34, you're right, we're getting all kinds of interesting data, but we're going to target ourselves to bankruptcy. It's like, at the end of the day, the target was meant to be like, how do we position? Like, who is, our positioning that helps draft, it can help shape creative and everything else. But When you buy digital, that's the only audience you're getting. When you're getting broadcast, whether it's radio or television, you're getting that target, but you're also getting all the other influencers that come along with that, almost as an added value, because you're buying against the demo and you're getting the rest of that audience for free. P&G, who you guys may have heard of, largest ad spender in the world, they had an interesting thought, or not an interesting thought. Mark Pritchard, their CMO, he came out and 2 years ago, he said, I've had enough. Like, we're not going to give up on digital because you get too much robust data, but we're not growing our sales. We're having problems with ad fraud and trust. The fraud being, if I order up 1 million impressions, am I getting 1 million human impressions, or am I getting bots? Am I getting click farms? Am I getting, a lot of other things where there's not engagement? And quite frankly, and there was a lot of articles that were sent out, the Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, everything else, that said this is a real issue in the digital space. And Mark Pritchard said, I'm going to move my money. I'm going to take $200 million out of digital and move it back, radio being the largest benefactor of that. And they had their largest growth in 10 years. As a result of it. Now, that wasn't a popular move by the agency, quite frankly. It's like, there's so many more targeting options and everything else. And I'm not by any means saying, because Mark Pritchard did not give up on digital. There's all kinds of robust data that you can get from digital that's helpful. But he did say, what I'm missing is upper funnel consideration and intent. So when it gets to the lower funnel digital, it's like a warm handoff. It's a warm lead. There's some kind of engagement and connectivity that is created either by an influencer, brand campaigns, or whatever else, upper funnel. So by the time it gets to the lower funnel and there's a digital creative, that there's already some kind of connectivity, passion, interest in it that I will engage with. Same thing happened with, a few months ago, I was meeting with one of the presidents of Universal Pictures globally. Highly visual medium, right? Getting filmmakers to say I want to use audio instead of video is like almost impossible, right? It's like, of all the people. But they had the exact same thing that Pritchard was saying. They're saying that our engagement in the digital space, if we don't drive interest upper funnel, and so they've shifted. We've gone from probably, with the big studios, from 5 or 10 million to over $100 million over the last 3 or 4 years, just specifically on driving engagement and interest that makes the connectivity once you get to the digital space work harder. Does that make sense? I may have gone around your question a little bit.
No, that's perfect, because I was going to ask the next one was the balance between digital and radio, the relationship of it.
Yeah, it really is a warm handoff. It's, at the end of the day, people were concerned in the digital space, and you guys have probably heard it too, that engagement levels, click-throughs, or whatever else were not as high as they would like. And so how do we create interest so when you see it, it's not the first time, because that was becoming wallpaper. And so, the fact is, radio's a little intrusive. You're in your car, you can't decide not to listen. Our ears have time, our eyes don't. And if you think about, what do you mean our eyes don't have time? If you think about when you're at home, you sit on your couch, end of the day, I guarantee you, your family, if you have family, there's nobody just sitting on the couch watching TV that doesn't either have their laptop, their iPhone, their iPad, something else going on. There's this tremendous competition involved to get the attention of our eyes everywhere we look. And so the upside is when you're in your car, we kind of got you, in particular, and now through Alexa, we've got you, we've got your attention, and it's a little intrusive. You don't get to decide not to listen unless you take an action that I'm not going to, I'm going to turn it off. And that's where we can create the interest, and that's where, quite frankly, the use of influencers, if it was my money, if I'm sitting where you are, the use of influencers is, hey, this is a friend talking to me. I'm much more likelihood that I'm going to listen to them than I am to anybody else.
We actually created something like that, actually. And, it's interesting. I call it the Bob Pittman ripple effect. Like last year, when I did the tour in different cities and walked in, all of a sudden they're like, yes, sir, what would you like? Yes, sir, what can we do for you? And cutting minimum spends in half and doing special things. Yeah. We actually, to that point, because we really want to disrupt the digital space, want to do it differently. It's one thing to get a digital ad that's just a basic ad. But when you get it from a friend you already know, and you're talking to if I know, for example, a TAM listener, and now I'm going right to him with the most popular voice on WTAM.
Yeah.
That's a lot different.
Yeah.
So we actually created that, and I don't know what you told the people in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But man, Ryan, did they like give you like the red carpet?
Yeah.
The
I
market-
noticed you, Ryan. Like I saw you on the video. So yeah.
So he comes in and says, "Take care of this, make this good."
Yeah.
So can we show you what we created for Ryan for his next digital ad? That'd be all right. You guys with us here?
Yeah.
Let's play it. You can't play this, right?
Today?
And while we're waiting, how many people are doing videos right now in this fashion? Because I don't see a lot of them. I was in Chicago a couple weeks ago and I actually saw one example, relatively new. Is this kind of a relatively new rollout?
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to yes.
Yeah.
Look. We've got some markets that have probably accelerated the offering in the markets, but this is something that there's no reason you have to wait too. There's something that you can ask your team about and just say, I want to do this.
Okay, let's play the example. This is a 30-second commercial.
I'm sitting here with Ryan Young from Young Team Realty, #1 agent for Keller Williams and all of Greater Cleveland.
Always glad to be here.
Explain this new procedure you have in selling a home called Instant Offer.
Basically a cash offer on your house within 24 hours, and that has no commissions, no repairs, no showings. It's just basically a streamlined process in selling your home.
Tell people how they get a hold of you one last time, Ryan.
They can find us at iTrustRyan.com or skipthestress.com.
What do you guys think? So now, explain to us, Greg, how would that be serviced up to people digitally? Like how now, he's already been advertising with Triv for about a year or so.
Yeah.
He was already on with 2 other popular morning show hosts. So this station has already been a slam dunk for him. Now, how does this add a layer to what he's doing?
I think it's just extended reach and frequency. So I think that there's 2 options, and I'm not sure the exact plan that you have, Ryan. So you might be better to speak to it. But there's when we do this, there's the option of actually on our owned and operated that actually serves as pre-roll on any of our audio offerings or video offerings. That this will actually precede that. And then there's also an option to take that creative and use it in the marketplace for targeted, whether it's on any of your targeted digital, whether it's a Facebook video or any of the other options that are out there. So we have markets that will take this. It becomes your creative, not just your interaction and your transaction with iHeart, but it can also become, hey, here's your creative to use in your digital placement outside of iHeart if you're doing anything.
And you know what I love about it? We've got a couple other ones where we're not going to show all of them, but there's some that really just show the friendship that's there, and it becomes real. It's authentic.
Yeah.
Compliments we're doing. Last year, Bob made a comment about adding 15-second reminders after you've seen it. What I love about this with the digital is now a person is 2 clicks away from working with Ryan.
Yeah.
Versus having to write down a number, remember to Google search him. They can just click the ad and go right to his website.
Yeah, I think that, to Bob's point about the 15s, if you've been on the market a while, people are familiar with your name, your relationship with your host. I'm a big believer in 15s. It's almost like when we talk to the studios and you've got Avengers coming out. It's like everybody knows what Avengers is. Like you don't need to give me a 30 or a 60 to talk about Avengers. Like give me a 15 and let's have a reminder, right? So if you're relatively new, I would say that you probably need some time to let that relationship develop. And if you've become known on the station, oh yeah, Ryan, I've heard Mike talking about him, then at that point, after a while, after an extended period, then a heavier use of 15 reminders is good. It's that combination of and that's that goes back to the noisy. Bob was probably recommending the 15s because of that noise again, and that at the end of the day, you just need to be in the consideration set because people may not be thinking about buying a home the first time they hear about you, but at some point when they do make that decision, you want the trigger, and you don't want to miss that opportunity to have the trigger. I was actually on the phone with somebody on the way in. Talking to them about Bacardi, a deal that we did with Bacardi last year. And for them, it was all about a time. It was about, hey, people like Bacardi, but nobody thinks about it when they go up to the bar or when the waiter or waitress comes over and they say, hey, what can I get you? It's like, what do you have on tap? It's like, it's just immediately where it was like, can we just tell them going into afternoons or going into the evenings, like, drink Bacardi tonight? Ask, just over and over again with 5s or 10s. You may say, does that really work? It did. It was that simple as drink Bacardi tonight. It was a reminder as people are going out to get you in the consideration set. And at the end of the day, we want people to have enough familiarity with you. Taking off. I mean, he's kind of our Ryan Seacrest of the country. Format. We have 130. It's actually our biggest footprint across the country is the country format. We have over 130 stations. CHR being second with over 90. He's a contemporary version of country. He's gotten a lot of visibility, as you've seen, recently, hosting a number of things, being on Dances with the Stars, won it, But he won it. He won Dancing with the Stars, not because he was the best dancer. He won Dancing with the Stars because he's an influencer and because he has a following and everybody voted for him because he has this platform. It actually was a perfect testament to the power of radio at the end of the day because he was not the best dancer. And I would tell you that. I would tell Bobby that if he was in here right now. Yeah, so for people like Bobby and Ryan, there's two ways you would use influencers, I think. There's one of the benefits of using, I'll use either one of those, because I've worked with Ryan and we continued as he grew with us and externally. He was both just local only, and then he became a local on KISS FM here in LA, but syndicated nationally. And some of you probably use him in middays across the country.
Why we get to use him in middays? Because of you.
Yeah. But we had that conversation, a couple years ago. So here's what I would say, because I think I'm glad you brought this up, because there's some of you that are probably thinking, like, localism, Ryan's not local. So here's what you have to balance. There's not many people that have access to have Ryan read their spots as they look. In fact, I can't think of any other one that isn't buying his network program. You guys are exclusive in that regard. We do not go cut deals with Ryan to have him do local spots in markets. And so that was a unique kind of presentation that Matt brought to me and said, could we do something like this? And we figured something out. The benefit you get of a national recognized personality that is crystal clean, he has a clean reputation, somebody that is, America's next door neighbor or whatever else, that there's a benefit to that you would otherwise have to go pay huge talent fees for. You have to balance that with the localism, him talking about your, the weather that's happening right now, or the store down the road, or everybody's favorite, water hole, or, whatever else. There's a balance between those two. And so for me, it's in particular, if you're introducing yourself to a market or having Ryan be able to talk specifically about you, that's something that's just not afforded others. So I would, personally, you say, well, what if I want the talk personality in the morning? And you guys have to figure out, the return on investment. I would do both, but I wouldn't give that up. If I was able to get somebody like a Ryan to voice my spots and have that kind of credibility, but I would remind people of it, in case they didn't know about it. There's that extra credibility, not with being arrogant, I have Ryan Seacrest doing my spots, but I would some way find a subtle way. How'd you hear about me? Did you hear the Ryan Seacrest talking about me? Or did you have, that is a reminder to them too, that gets you, further up. They may not even remember. They may be calling you because they heard him talking about it, but because they've been bombarded with 1,500 other messages between now and then, they may forget it. But I would bring that up like I would anything else. If I call somebody right now and I'm trying to get in to see, let's say, the CEO of Coca-Cola. If I get in to see the CEO of Coke, or if I'm trying to, I would tell the CEO of Coke, hey, Nick Drake from T-Mobile recommended I get in touch with you. I would actually use Nick Drake, the CMO of T-Mobile, to make the connective. I would do the same thing if I were you. You're trying to make a sale or get that interest, remind them that you're connected to Ryan or Bobby or anybody else, or the local personalities in the market.
Have you ever been to Pink's Hot Dogs in LA?
Yeah.
I love that story about endorsers. Describe to them about Pink's, what you see when you walk in. It's a hot dog stand.
Yeah. What
pictures on the wall.
Oh yeah, there's just an enormous, an endless amount of people that have been willing to put their name behind it. because that they believe it's an icon, and so when you walk in, you feel like you're getting something special.
Like Celine Dion,
Yeah.
Tim McGraw, like they eat hot dogs.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there are autographed pictures all over the wall, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the power of I think one of our agents, Brian Burge, I love what he says when he goes on appointments. He says, he gives a whole menu of all the people that recommend him. We don't say endorse, we say recommend. Mm-hmm. Who should we thank? Who should we give feedback to about the process?
Back to the stations.
In other words, back to the personalities.
Yeah.
As if he's talking to them.
Yeah. So, if I understand your question correctly, you were asking earlier, like, should you get to know the influencers? Should you actually have, like, I would say our best influencer relationships, that there is a personal connection. It's not just we meet once a quarter and talk about copy, that there's texts that go on. There was, hey, I just sold a house and they mentioned you. Like, you should communicate. They want to know that. The same way that you guys get motivated, they get motivated. If they think they're making a difference for you, it gives them fuel. It gets them excited. So, whoever your influencer is, there should be that level of communication with the influencer that talks about, what's going on. If somebody that mentioned them, an anecdote that just happened that you think could be an interesting, piece that they could put in on the show. It's just any of those things, the more you communicate with them, the more it will. You ask a question at the beginning, authenticity. Like, that's everything today. Like, probably the biggest buzzword last year in media was trust. It came out and it said, because of the privacy issues with Facebook, because of the use of bots and people's advertisements showing up in locations they didn't want it, on sites that they didn't want to be associated with, and because of ad fraud. Like, those three things, trust became a huge buzzword in the industry, in the ad industry, but the biggest by far. Every week you would read another article from a CMO's pulling out of certain areas and committing to others because of trust. You're in a highly trusted medium right now. You're in the research that came back is radio is the most trusted medium by far. Like 2 times more social, 2 times more than television. And why is that? It's not because it's because you've got this companionship. It's because you've got somebody on the air that has become their friend that they believe in, number one. Number two, we're highly regulated, the FCC. So there's no issues with us when it comes to ad fraud or bot usage or anything else. And so the good thing for you is you're in a place where the consumers are saying trust is a problem. It's rolled up to marketers, and you're in a place that I would lean heavily on is you can trust, and there's authenticity because people want that.
So one of the things I want to share with everybody, because you're actually making another special opportunity for people, and talk about Local Lock for a minute. Mm-hmm. This was eye-opening.
Yeah. So I don't know how many have seen it yet, like if it's gone out, but it's just another digital offering for us. One of the things that we found out, and you guys probably know this, is when you do advertise with us, one of the things that we want to make sure is that the pipeline is clean. That when people search for you, that there's nothing in the way, there's no broken pipes, so everybody that we're influencing actually gets to your site. Does that make sense? So when I say pipe, I just mean anything people would go through, directory listings to be able to find out, Google My Business, to find out, about your services. And what we found out is that, I don't know if you have.
Yeah, we've got the slides.
Do you have the slide? Will you pull that up? If you look at the bottom right there where it says why you need to lock your data, we found a service that we could partner with on a global scale that talks about, are the pipelines clean? And we'll share this with you guys.
And I've got these slides too, so we can.
The average
share.
business listing, 37% have an incorrect name, 43% an incorrect address, 18% incorrect phone number. Now, all of you are saying, well, not me, and you're wrong. Like every one of you thinks, well, I've got mine handled, and you don't. Because we actually did our own addresses too. We actually did all of our locations for iHeart for people that wanted to say, and it's like, wow. And it's so easy to do a quick scan of your business. It doesn't cost you anything for us to do that. We do a quick scan of your business to find out where you have broken links in directory listings. And so for us, it's locking that down, and it's actually really, we're not doing this one to make money, by the way. And you may say, oh, that you're a capitalist, you're just like the rest of us. Why wouldn't you do this to make money? Do you know why we started doing this? We wanted to do this to make sure that the ROI you were getting with us was true, and that we were maximizing. It's almost like an optimization engine for us.
And then we can pay more money to you.
Correct. At the end of the day, that's correct. So there is some capitalism after all. So at the end of the day is that we want to make sure that when you've invested with us, this isn't about the monthly, $250 or whatever it is to make sure that your directory listings are correct and accurate. The other thing this does is it locks it. I don't know if you know this, but people can change your directory listings. If they go in on your site and say, oh, I called this number, it didn't work, or oh, this address, they can actually go change it. Your competitors could too, and there's nothing that gets locked. We're Google certified. We work with them. We can lock it where nobody can touch it. And so that's
How many would you say, because I didn't realize this, we often just associate that people are just going to Google search.
Yeah.
What did you find? How many other places do people often go to search?
I'm the same with you. I mean, it's dozens. It's not just Google. Google's the majority, but you're leaving money on the table if you don't take care of the other directory listings.
And what's neat about this too, this isn't just for people in iHeart markets. Because a lot of the people here, they're in a variety of markets where there's no iHeart stations.
Yeah.
We can do this same scan anywhere.
Yeah, you can. This doesn't have to be tied to an iHeart deal. It's just for us. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to make all of your media work better. It's not just. That's the other thing is we bring it in with ours, but this is like any way people are finding out about you, this makes it more efficient. I mean, so there's really digital knowledge management, and then there's reputation management. The other offering that comes with this is an aggregated dashboard for you, for anybody that is, has comments, questions. It's putting all your reviews onto one site, one single dashboard that serves up and allows you to engage with the customers on their terms. And there's it's a quick, if you look at the Local Lock RM Assistant, you view and update information on the fly, you can respond to reviews on the fly, receive real-time notifications. At the end of the day, that also impacts your ratings and reviews when it comes to Google. And that's important because at the end of the day, you want to be, listed at the top. And there's some things that you may or may not be doing that could help you with that. And then the third piece is really review generation, and that's just it's a simple widget that makes it easy to add reviews to your websites, and it adds the actual stars. You know how you see stars on some listings on the SERPs, the search engine review pages, and you say, well, how do you get those stars? This is one of those ways that'll kind of help with that, and people naturally give more credit to people that have stars along with their reviews and ratings. And so it's just some basic thing.
But you know what, Greg? People don't care about reviews in this room.
No, not at all. I'm speaking I'm preaching to the choir here. But Google looks at three things over on the red side. They look at relevance, distance, and prominence. And prominence is their kind of the reputation. And that's one of the areas that you control by just being more diligent and making sure your information is available when people want to get it, responding to reviews. It's one of those things that's like, it impacts. I started the conversation off with all of you today talking about we live in a search world. We do. We just live in a search world. But so it's important that you've kind of taken care of all of your business further upstream to make sure that you're getting the right listings.
No, this is fantastic. I mean, it just came out just really within the last several months on here, and you offer that to us, first option.
Yep.
And the Seacrest deal, I don't know if many people know about that, but the talent fees, I mean, what is talent fees normally? Like if someone off the street came to you and said that, what would it be?
With him?
Yeah.
It would be a 7-figure investment.
And
just in talent fee.
Just in talent fee.
For him to be able to,
But you orchestrated this with Melissa. 5% of whatever spots we run with him, that's it.
Yeah.
So if we spend $2,000, it's $100.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that goes back.
Can you guys thank him for that for me?
Yeah. That goes back to partnership, though. That goes back to, because Ryan, first of all, Ryan would never have done it with that many unless there was already a relationship in place that you could trust. It goes back to trust. If we ever got burned by one of you that, ended up, being sent to to prison for some felony that and Ryan had his name attached to it, it would damage everybody. This is like, nope, okay, we've done business with them for a long time, reputable. This is a service to the community. The agents have been vetted and recommended. And so there's a trust factor that happens. That doesn't happen. If somebody came off the street tomorrow and said to us, hey, I'm a new business advertiser, you may or may not believe this, I'm telling you it's 100% true, and said, I've got a ton of money for you, I want to use Ryan or Bobby or Rush or anybody else across the country to do this almost bifurcated co-op type program, we would say no, and they would have to do business with us for a while to get us to the point where it's okay, we trust them and we can do that. Because our talent, their reputation, just like yours, is on the line. If they're recommending something and they get bad reviews or they get a lot of complaints, and we've done this many times, we've taken advertisers off the air with influencers that it's damaging their brand in some form or fashion. We say, we got to split. So the onus is on you guys too to continue to perform and make sure you treat that relationship the way he's treating it too, or she, whoever's using it.
Well, that's really a testament to all of you guys for being able to maintain the excellent relationships that you have because of that. So thank you. That's we can't thank you enough for that.
It goes both ways. It's interesting. You'd ask a question earlier too that I want to comment on. It's funny because you're accessing. And you guys know this from Bob talking to you last year. You're accessing a platform that just has ridiculous reach. I don't need to sell you on radio, but it's kind of dumbfounding that you still reach over the 90% of the population on a weekly basis. It's with everything else going the way it has. But if you ever question it, because people do, and I was having a conversation yesterday. I was up in San Francisco meeting with a client, and we were talking about digital, and I said, listen, at the end of the day, if you even question the Nielsen numbers or anything else, I said, here's all you need to know. I said, probably the two most data-rich companies in the world are like Amazon and Google, right? Who do they use when they advertise? Us. Like, two of our biggest partners are Amazon and Google. They have so much data, they can do anything with it. But they say, hey, I need to impact people further up the funnel and create. So when they launch Alexa or Google Assistant or, they come to us and say, I want to have your influencer talk about how they're using Alexa in the home or ultimately in the car or anywhere else. And so for me, there's the data piece and then there's the anecdotal piece. And it's like it's this symbiotic relationship on how these two work together. So if I'm not saying you are because you guys are believers in radio, but all you have to do is look to some of the most data-rich companies and say, what does Jeff Bezos know that I don't? And it kind of makes you feel good about knowing you've made a good decision. It's just how do you optimize it, whether it's through local lock, using the personalities across multiple, or platforms, or what we said, and I was getting a head nod up here at the front at the beginning, making sure you really do have an authentic relationship with that influencer. And if you're not getting that, then you talk to Matt and you talk to the local markets and you make sure that you have communication with them. Because for me, if I'm spending it, I'm making sure that we know each other and that he can or she can deliver that message authentically.
Awesome. Would you mind taking, we got about maybe 5-10 minutes. Would you mind taking a question
Yes.
or two? Bob?
I think I've got a mic.
You still have a mic.
I have a mic, but I'm not sure.
I don't know what number. There we go. So what
By
I
the way,
heard,
Bob's actually on iHeart in Louisville.
and I used to work for iHeart.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, in the back in the 90s. Anyway,
Okay.
Other story. I heard Gary Vaynerchuk in Inman 2 years ago say, take money out of radio and TV, put it in Facebook, and then buy Facebook stock. And then Facebook went through this big
Privacy.
security problem, right? So, just to be clear, so what you're saying is that Facebook created their own problem, and now those who were trusting Facebook are pulling out, like P&G,
Yeah.
and putting money back into radio.
Yeah. It's funny, the whatever you heard from Gary actually has been on the record a number of times on the power of influencers in radio. So it's interesting, whatever piece that he was on right then, for those of you that haven't followed Facebook went through a ton of privacy issues last year on how they were using data and the data they were extracting from their followers. And now the amount of segmentation you can do has been cut almost by 75%. So the segmentation data and the use of that data came back considerably. And the advertisers like P&G, they haven't stopped. I mean, if I'm going to be complete, they haven't stopped, but they reduced it considerably because for two reasons: the privacy issues, but they also weren't getting the return that they looked for on a sustained basis.
One follow-up on another thought. All of us advertise on iHeart extensively, yet if the consumer doesn't remember where to go for our individual URL to make contact with us or our phone number, would you set up a landing page on each of your radio station's websites where all of your advertisers would be listed with links to our websites, and then have the talent drive on a promo basis, hey, if you missed one of our sponsors or where to get in contact with them, go to their radio station website and then have a link to that page.
Yeah, I'm open to talking about anything like that. We've tried things like that before. Today's consumer wants an easy button. They do not want an extra click. If you have an extra click, you have to go to one site to click to another site. The amount of people that you lose is dramatic. And so what we have to do is, if people aren't remembering the site, is think of something creatively to help with that. Because that easy button, even in our own dealings, like when we have that extra click, when we see stories that we've posted or anything else, it's precipitous drop if you have to go through to. Convenience wins almost always. And so in today's world, even though you're talking about something that is a high value purchase and something that you think people would, there is also something about, if we don't, to your point, remind them at the right time, I'm your guy, or I'm your girl, whatever else, that they'll go somewhere else because convenience wins. And so I'm open to us talking about that, but I would, long term, it would be much better if you've developed a brand that's easy for people to remember. This is where I go.
What makes me think of is, now what happens if 5 other realtors are advertising and their names are right under you? You're just giving them a list of 5 people.
Right, but since we actually suggested this idea, we should all have exclusivity in the real estate.
Cool. Got any other questions I got here? Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier that...
Hold on, one second, Mike's coming.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that 85% of consumers were still getting through broadcast and 15. I'm sure you guys are doing the research. Do you see that number changing as millennials age?
Yeah.
I just know my kids don't ever listen to the radio. Everything's a streaming service.
Listen, that's a great question. Everybody hear the question? I probably interrupted you, so I'm sorry. He's asking, is that 85% that I mentioned, 85% of all audio consumption is still done on broadcast? Do we see that number changing because his teenagers, they're not listening to radio? So here's what I would say on that, is that the monthly usage actually hasn't changed even with teens. So even those that okay, my kids aren't listening to it because, I know what my kids, I'm even like, hey, is that an iHeart? It's like, what are you listening to? But the daily consumption has. Technology has actually increased audio consumption. It's made it easier for people to consume more. And so what's happened is, you'll discover music, if we're talking about teens, on radio, and then you'll download it onto your playlist. So they actually use radio in a different way. Yes, we see the consumption changing, and the reason we see it changing mainly is because of Alexa. And then you say, well, hey, there's Google Home too. Alexa has just a decided advantage when in that space right now, kind of first in wins. And they're working closely with the OEM. So, 5-10 years down the road, you could be having, at scale, an audio assistant.
And Spotify has paid playlists now.
Yeah.
New music comes out, they put it.
Yeah.
Could we insert influencers into those spaces?
Yeah.
In the future to capitalize on that?
Yeah, it hasn't scaled yet, but in the future, yes. And even right now, I mean, there's no reason. There's only one way you can advertise on Alexa, and that's through us. You could actually have your spots running in home on Alexa. So it's we don't see ourselves as radio and digital and stream. We see it as a product. We have a product that has a lot of different distribution platforms. Right now, the one that is still most compelling and by far the biggest is on broadcast. But it's growing at like 1 or 2% a year, not like 5 or 10%. So it's not logical. Like, you actually think, how's that possible? And it goes back to the easy button again. Like, people in their car have unlimited options. But at the end of the day, people have been conditioned, or they want easy, and it's like, it's on. I can push a button, it goes to the next one that I know it is. I'm not going to be able to search. And it doesn't follow like logic. You're like, no, you can listen to anything you want. Like, tell me exactly the song you want, and I'll put you in. But it's like, well, I like my button. Like, I like my Kiss.
We're just lazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
at the end of the day, I know you're saying that maybe to be funny, but you're right. All research would say that the consumer is lazy, and we're all lazy. And so that's why it goes back to the easy button. When it's time for somebody to make a decision, you have to make it easy on them. It doesn't matter how much relationship you build. You have the decided advantage, apples being apples. But if you're not reminding them, then they've got a million other messages coming at them,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. One last question, Kathy?
So back to Alexa, because I can see lots of things coming down the pike for real estate. Actually, there are people that advertise. There's a competitor in Brighton, Michigan, and I say, find me a house in Brighton, and it's on Alexa. So back to it. If I say play Dr. Radio comes on. If I say play country music, will my local country music station come on? If I say play 107.1, will Alexa play any station I tell her to? Because I wasn't aware of any of this stuff.
Yeah, you would have to tell Alexa the station. Because if you say play country music, it's too broad. So you would say play, 102.7 Kiss FM. Now the upside, because of our relationship with Amazon, anybody can do it. Like, the other radio groups could actually do it, but you would have to get Alexa or the consumer to download a skill set onto Alexa, which the easy button is not going to happen. But because we're embedded with Amazon on Alexa, for the stations that you're on, they can just mention the station in the market and they play. Yeah.
Very good.
Just one point.
Lisa?
So, because we all talked earlier about how review-driven.
Hold on one second. We got a mic coming.
I have a loud mouth. I don't know why that would be necessary, but okay.
It's different. Because we are all so review-driven, and we were just discussing that earlier, and you're tying that into the Alexa, because when you ask Alexa, who's the best realtor in Temecula, California? And it comes up with Team Force. And we always thought it was coming from either our Google reviews, because Google's one of our number one lead sources, and or Yelp. So added that, and I really don't know where it comes from. I'm just assuming it comes from one of those sites. But added to that, I didn't know we could actually use iHeart as an advertising mechanism on Alexa. I'm super excited about that. It's one of my to-dos now, to call Matt right after this. But are they tied together at all, or would it just be nice to have that as a complimentary ad for the reviews, or I don't know?
We wouldn't, so the question about, hey, who's the best realtor to use in City X, we wouldn't control that. That would be something that, but as far as in your local market, making sure that you had ads that ran on Alexa, because it's not part of then that's 100% we can do that. We can make sure that your spots do.
So in other words, you can hear if it's on Kiss FM already, we can't just place an ad on Alexa and not on radio.
Yeah, it is a separate distribution, so it's not part of the broadcast, because the broadcast is a simulcast now on our broadcast and mobile devices. Alexa is separate, but it's not. It's part of a targeted buy. You would never buy just Alexa because the reach is like this. It's so small overall. When I say it's 20%, it's not 20% of our audience. It's 20% of the stream, and the stream is like 10 to 15% of your audience. So you're taking like 2% of your audience. It's a nice thing to have. It goes back to also. Yeah, it's a nice thing to have, but it's not going to drive your business. But as part of your other campaign, it would be easy for us to do that.
Excellent. Very good. Well,
Yes,
one more question? Go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, you just answered it. So.
Okay. Great.
Well, listen, I know you've got a conference call coming up. You etched out a little hour for us in the day, Greg.
That's great.
Can you give Greg a hand, please?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you.
Yeah.
We really appreciate